So, I think it is about time we talk about him. We have left this topic for far too long, and by now I have mentioned the guy too many times not to talk about him. You know who he is. It's Grand Admiral Thrawn. Mithra Nurudu, or Thrawn, was a naval personnel that served with the Empire before his disappearance, serving as the Grand Admiral of the Imperial Navy, whom was essentially responsible for overseeing it, also strategizing with high command to decide how Imperial fleets should be organised in response to outside forces or threats. Now, before we go on, Thrawn's story is absurdly vast and so chock full of tiny and intricate details that to explain it all would mean that we would likely be here for hours. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, we'll cover specific key points from throughout his life, and hopefully we'll have a much more condensed video. Sounds good? Okay, let's start. Born in 59 BBY on the planet of Rentor, this little run-of-the-mill world was one of the planets that orbited near and around Scylla, home to an elusive alien race known as the Chiss. The Chiss lived and operated out of the unknown regions, which is that big blank part of the galaxy map. In case you couldn't tell, the unknown regions is a scary and dangerous place, packed with as much unexplainable celestial phenomenon as one could dream of. It is an extremely difficult environment to live in, mainly due to the fact that the majority of it is unmapped, making navigation really difficult for the Chiss Ascendancy. Thrawn was born into a poorer family of little known details, but such a humble upbringing had no influence on his journey going ahead. That journey started in school, with Thrawn finding himself to be very smart in the field of academic study, which led him to catch the attention of the Mitt family, later being adopted by them and being set on a path that would see him end up in the Chiss Expansionary Defence Fleet. He would later be transferred to Taharim Academy, where he would score absurdly exceptional results, leading to accusations of cheating, but that's a story for another time. The Mitt family would be hugely influential to Thrawn throughout his time in the Ascendancy. As one of the 9 ruling families throughout the entire Chiss species, they would supply him with all he needed to live comfortably, also allowing him to get his foot in the door when it came to rising up the ranks. Thrawn would continue his career within the Chiss Ascendancy, becoming quite the controversial figure due to his unconventional yet effective methods of ship-based warfare, not really lining up with the standards of most other fleet officials. Despite this, Thrawn could never consider himself bothered by the image put on him by others, continuing to complete many missions throughout his time with the fleet. These missions were extremely widely varied, again due to the chaotic and arduous nature of being situated within the unknown regions, doing such wonderful things as defending against pirates and raiders skulking about the region, preying on Chiss ships and looking for potential cargo scores to sell, escorting cargo vessels to their destination through dangerous patches of space that make up the unknown regions, defending the Ascendancy's borders from any external threats, and just generally making sure that their realm of space was safe. Thrawn not only continued to be a part of the Ascendancy fleet, but also took up a number of different roles within spacefaring and galaxy navigation, consolidating his experience and cementing himself as a worthy asset for the 9 aristocratic superfamilies of the Chiss species, including his own, working his way up the ranks from junior officer all the way to senior captain and so on. The Chiss would later find themselves at odds with a dangerous but elusive race known as the Grisk, with each side taking many swings at one another. The Grisk end goal was to destroy the Chiss species, being led on a campaign of warfare through the unknown regions by someone named Jictus, whom oversaw the Grisk Armada, but due to the machinations of Thrawn and other brilliant minds within the Ascendancy, well, let's just say that these skirmishes weren't in the Grisk favour, and that is when we get on to... Now I should mention that the Chiss did encounter and know about the Galactic Republic, but largely chose to keep to themselves and not interfere during the Clone Wars. But when this new order came to be, well, suffice to say their interest was piqued. On our side, it is now the early Galactic Empire, the Republic is no more, the galaxy is now in a time of great change, and Thrawn has been tasked with a rather unusual mission. Having caught wind of the new empire, the Ascendancy wanted to judge whether or not it was a worthy ally in the fight against the Grisk. So what did they have Thrawn do? Well, they decided to stage an exile for him, and have him live out that exile on a planet within the expansionist regions, in the hopes that he would attract the Empire out to that location to organise a meeting with some Jedi, having assumed they were still around due to previous encounters with them. To keep it brief, this all came to a head when Thrawn encountered the Venator Strikefast, tormenting the Imperial scouts and landing parties until his inevitable capture and arrest from the ship's captain, to which he was promptly taken to Coruscant to meet the Emperor, with the Emperor intrigued by his knowledge regarding the unknown regions and granting him a chance to serve in the Imperial Navy in exchange for this information and knowledge, robbing the Chiss species of one of their greatest assets. And so Thrawn's training began at the Imperial Naval Academy on Coruscant, where he was unfortunately bullied, likely due to being an alien. This bullying did not go unpunished, due to the incredibly dense officers who likely saw him as lesser due to, again, being an alien. Either way, this prejudice did not stop Thrawn's determination. He was hardy and wasn't afraid to give these bullies a beating when they most needed it, showcasing that he would definitely want to put up a fight and not back down when push came to shove. Along with that, Thrawn graduated from the academy with little to no trouble and began working his way up the naval rank hierarchy. From getting a good start as a lieutenant on the Gazanti freighter Bloodcrow, doing basic naval duties like hunting pirates, smugglers and other criminals in the Outer Rim, to becoming the captain of the Acclamator Bloodwasp and dealing with Umbaran insurgents and a whole lot more. Thrawn soared through the ranks of the Navy, going from Commander to Commodore, Admiral, and finally Grand Admiral and any rank in between, which brings us to Lothal. Now by this point, Thrawn is an extremely experienced naval officer, having spent the majority of his life operating and overseeing spacefaring vessels, but none of those vessels that came before could quite compare to the infamous Chimera. The Chimera was Thrawn's personal Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer, which had quite the history of extensive naval achievements, but all you need to know is that this is a ship that Thrawn would make use of in his later career, and would be heavily involved in this next part of Thrawn's story. Now I'm going to skip the details, but put quite simply, Thrawn was tasked with luring out and capturing the rebel group known as the Ghost Crew on Lothal, but unbeknownst to him, the rebels had a trick up their sleeve, which came in the form of the Purgles, enticing them to wrap their tendrils around the Chimera and jump to hyperspace. Any and all personnel on board the vessel at that time, including Thrawn, have not been seen since. So where did Thrawn end up? Who knows? The Chimera could have been taken light years outside of the galactic plane or deep into the unknown regions. Either way, it was likely to be taken to a place where navigation is borderline impossible, making it extremely difficult for the Chimera to get back into map space. So, who knows if Thrawn will ever return, or if he is even still alive. So, we've discussed Thrawn's story, but just what was it that makes Grand Admiral Thrawn the Empire's greatest admiral and strategist? Well, it's simple really. He was smart, incredibly smart, and very much capable of thinking outside of the box when it came to strategizing with ships. He knew the strengths and weaknesses of each vessel that he commanded, and where best to position them on a battlefield. You may be wondering what I mean when I say out of the box. Well, Thrawn was an admirer of the many different cultures that the galaxy has, and any chance he got, he would study and learn about them in his free time. This had the intended effect of allowing him to understand his enemies when out in battle, being able to narrow down what an enemy will do from this knowledge regarding cultural traditions and battle practices. This way of learning and understanding his enemies through studying their culture and traditions has enabled him to build up a vast archive full of this stuff, both physically and mentally, making Thrawn able to predict what an enemy vessel will do and how enemy fleets tend to organise themselves, and the ideals of their military and rank structures, taking advantage of that and using it in his favour. Add his calm and collected demeanour on top of that, then you have a man who is not afraid to work within stressful situations, carefully planning his next move against those who would oppose him. But unlike his associates, Thrawn was not some barbaric, power-hungry person like most other individuals of the Navy, or the Empire for that matter, thank the Force. Instead, Thrawn was heavily against the harm of innocent civilians, not outright protecting them but choosing to avoid needless casualties where he could, being rather noble in that regard, although even he had his limits. During the Lothal incident, Thrawn bombarded the city with turbo laser fire from the Chimera, in order to get the Ghost crew out of hiding, although even then he mostly targeted active combatants rather than civilians. When it came to his enemies, although he was opposed to them, Thrawn often found himself having a great deal of respect for those he fought against, which showed that he did not underestimate their abilities, nor did he overestimate his in both ship and ground-based warfare, being both physically fit and adept at holding his own martially. The guy could fight hand to hand and certainly wasn't one to back down. But most importantly, Thrawn knew how to take risk, exploiting the weaknesses, blind spots and short-sightedness of those who would oppose him. He was not afraid to take some losses in order to advance a fight in his favour. Unlike other naval officers, he knew when and when not to hold back, willing to throw resources to the wind to keep his enemies on their toes. Overall, the galaxy hasn't had someone like Thrawn in a long time, and whether or not you think that's a good thing is entirely up to you. But one thing is absolutely certain. Thrawn was a military genius with an extensive history that most, if not all, high-ranking naval officials could not even dream of surpassing. So with that, why not like, subscribe, and share this video to start your journey into the Empire today, and with that, long live the Empire and may the Force be with you.